Everyone, I am Kessie and today we are discussing the input and output of computer organization and architecture. We will look at common input devices and we will define the input and the output. So the input, they are the data or the signals that are being sent to the computer, and the outputs, they are what the computer displays to the user interface. And these output and input devices, they are very important because they are the fundamental concepts in computer systems that enable communication between the external environment and the world. They are also essential because they serve as a bridge between human and also computers. We will continue to look into details by explaining the output and the output and the input one by one with my group members. Thank
Hello, I'm Steven. I'll be talking about input devices. Input devices are the tools we use to send information into the computer. Some common input devices are keyboard for typing letters and numbers, mouse for moving the cursor and clicking, scanner for turning papers into paper files, microphone for voice input. These devices take human actions and convert them into signals that a computer can understand. Input is first step in the computer's work process. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Bismarck and I'll be talking about output devices. So output devices are devices that display information that have been processed by the computer. And examples of output devices are the monitor, the speaker, and printer. So the monitor displays information that has been processed by the by the computer, and it displays information in the form of text or graphics. And a printer also prints out the information that has been displayed by the monitor. Speakers also produce sound, or they give us sound. So the output devices help us communicate better with the computer by showing us what the computer is thinking or giving us a result before the computer has processed. Thank you very much.
I'm Selassie Justice G1, and I'll be talking about two ways a computer connects to input and output devices, which are the memory mapped and isolated input output. So, to begin with, in memory mapped input output, the computer treats devices like the keyboard or printer the same way it treats memory, meaning both devices and memory share same address spaces. So in sending and receiving data, it uses same instruction for both. For example, imagine having one shelf for your books and your tools. So we move on to the isolated input output, which differs from the memory mapped input output. Here, devices are kept in their own separate spaces. The computer uses special instruction to talk to them, and it doesn't mix them with memory. This helps keeps things organized and avoids confusion. Example, having one shelf for your books and the other shelf for tools, each with its own spaces. So with the memory mapped input output, it's simple and fast because it uses the same space, and isolated input output keeps devices separate, which can be safer and organized. Both methods are used in computers depending on the system, which helps CPU communicate with outside world, that is, sending things to the printer or receiving inputs from a mouse.
Hello, I'm Mawuena and today I'm here to differentiate between programmed inputs or outputs, as well as interrupt-driven inputs or outputs in computers. So let's get straight into it. How does the programmed input or output work? So this is when the computer's brain, that's the CPU, right, the central processing unit. So it constantly checks the device again and again to see if it has sent or received data. So let's relate it to you standing at your door waiting for a friend to arrive. So you keep waiting every second because you do not know the exact time your friend or your visitor would arrive. So that is how the programmed inputs or outputs work. So it doesn't give you a prior notice So you have to check constantly to see if it has sent or received data. On the other hand, let's talk about the interrupt driven inputs or outputs. So this works way better than the program because with this it gives signal to the CPU when it's ready. So when it is ready, it gives the signal to the CPU. So the CPU doesn't have to check, unlike the programmed input. So we can conclude that the interrupt driven input or output is way better and it works faster than the programmed input or output. So if we are to relate this to the waiting for a friend at the door, we can say with this: when your friend arrives at the door, he or she will ring the bell to notice you of his or her arrival. So it gives you a signal or a notice that he or she has arrived. So that is how the interrupt driven input or output works. So we'll conclude by saying that the programmed driven input or that's the programmed input or output, right? It gives the CPU too much work. And on the other hand, the interrupt driven input or output allows the CPU to relax and gives its signal when ready. So basically, that is the explanation for one to differentiate between a programmed input or output as well as an interrupt driven input or output. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Hakeem. I'll be talking about input and output interfaces and buses. Input and output interfaces are what allow the computer and devices to talk to each other. Each device needs a controller or input or output port to connect with the CPU to transfer data. Computers use something called buses. There are three types of buses: data bus for sending data, address bus for sending location, control bus for sending instructions. These buses help input and output devices work together with the CPU smoothly. Thank you.
Hey everyone, the name is Gilbert today, and then today we are going to be talking about DMA, so in full direct memory access. Alright, so imagine your computer CPU, which is basically the main processor, as as the person in charge of everything internally. Usually when data needs to move around the computer, around like through your hard drive to your RAM, the CPU is very essential in every step. It has to read the data and then write the data, and it takes up the CPU's time. And this is where the DMA comes in. Yeah, so the DMA is like having a really good assistant. I'll see like the AI, but then it's not an AI, but then it functions like that to make things faster and more, simpler. So the DMA is like having a really good assistant. It lets certain part of the computer, like the hard drive controller and the graphics card, to move data directly to the RAM without having the CPU to do all the work. So the CPU just tells the DMA controller, hey, move this data from here, and then so that the CPU can focus on other stuff, so that I can make things faster. And so some people may go on to ask themselves, why does this matter, or why is it important? Well, it makes everything faster. Like I said earlier, think about playing video games. Your graphic cards need to constantly get information from the memory. So DMA processes makes the whole process quicker and faster. You understand? Okay, so that's DMA in a nutshell. It's a smart way to speed up data transfer and make the computer run faster and better. So yeah, no further. So I told you, it's something simple, but you need to just get the concept.
Hi everyone, I'm Eric Ati, and to wrap up on our group discussion on input and output in our computer systems, let's revisit why input and output is so essential or important. Key point to cover: talking about the roles of input and output devices. Input and output devices act as the bridge between users and the CPU. Keyboard and mice sense inputs whilst the monitor and the printer delivers the output. Without input and output, computers would be isolated machines or useless. Now, talking about the performance impacts, efficient input and output designs like the DMA and interrupt derived techniques boost speed and frees up the CPU. Imagine gaming without smooth graphics or audio delays in videos. So let's talk about real world connection. From touch screens to cloud storage, input and output innovations shape how we interact with technology daily. Better input and output means better user experience. So remember, input and output isn't just about peripherals, it's a lifeline of computing. Thanks for watching and shout outs to my amazing team for breaking it all down. Thank you.